I wanted to divorce my unfaithful wife, but her lover's wife showed up and gave me $50 million saying, "Do not divorce her yet. Wait 3 more months." Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments what city you're watching us from. There are decisions you think you're going to make in the heat of the moment with a broken heart and trembling hands. But sometimes life forces you to stop just when you're about to explode. That happened to me. I was 55 years old, married for 28, and I just confirmed what I'd suspected for months. Raquel, my wife, was cheating on me. It wasn't a hunch. It wasn't paranoia. It was real, tangible, painful like a dagger being slowly plunged into my stomach. That morning, before leaving the house, I checked her cell phone while she was in the shower. I saw the messages, I saw the photos, I saw the words she never said to me. "I love you, my life. I can't wait to see you today." Signed by someone named Eduardo. I felt the floor open up under my feet. 28 years, 2 adult children, a house we built together, vacations, laughs, promises. All of that evaporated in 5 minutes while I read conversations that were months old. I put the phone back where it was, left without having breakfast, and drove to my office with my hands clutching the steering while trying not to scream. All morning, I thought about only one thing, confronting her that same night, telling her I knew everything, asking for a divorce immediately, recovering some dignity before this turned into a public circus. I called Luis, my lawyer and friend since college. I told him I needed to see him urgently. He, knowing me well, knew from my tone that something serious had happened. We agreed to meet the next day to start the proceedings. I had already made the decision. I wasn't going to wait. I wasn't going to give her explanations. I was simply going to end it all and rebuild my life from scratch, even if it hurt like hell. But then something completely unexpected happened. It was 3 in the afternoon. I was sitting at my desk looking at papers without really reading them when my assistant knocked on the door. "Mauricio, there's a lady who insists on seeing you. She says it's urgent and personal. She doesn't have an appointment, but she assures you that you won't regret seeing her." I told her I wasn't in the mood for surprise visits, but she insisted. She says it's about Raquel. My heart stopped. Who the hell was this woman? A friend of Raquel's coming to defend her, someone who knew about the affair and wanted to warn me. I told my assistant to show her in. The door opened and a woman of about 50 entered, elegant, with perfectly styled hair and a serene but firm gaze. She was wearing a navy blue suit and carrying an expensive leather bag. She didn't seem nervous. She didn't seem scared. She seemed like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She sat in front of me without my asking and placed the bag on her lap. "Mauricio," she said with a calm voice, "my name is Christina. You don't know me, but I know your wife very well, and I know the man she's cheating on you with even better." I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, waiting for her to continue. She took a thick envelope from her bag and placed it on my desk. It was a sealed, heavy manila envelope. "Inside this envelope are $50 million, she said without blinking, "and I'm giving them to you under one condition." I was paralyzed. $50 million. The words floated in the air like something unreal. Impossible. I looked at the envelope. I looked at the woman. I looked at the envelope again. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask. "And why the hell are you offering me that?" Christina elegantly crossed her legs and looked me straight in the eye. "I'm Eduardo's wife," she replied. "The man Raquel is betraying you with, and I need you not to divorce her yet." Absolute silence. The world stopped spinning for a second. "What?" I mumbled, unable to process what I had just heard. "Don't divorce Raquel," she repeated with the same chilling calm. "Not yet. Wait exactly 3 months, 90 days, and after that do whatever you want. But if you act now, we're both going to lose." I leaned back in my chair, feeling like I was in the middle of an absurd movie. "This makes no sense," I said. "Why would you want me to wait? And what do you gain from this?" Christina sighed softly and opened her bag again. She took out a thin folder and slid it towards me. "Eduardo isn't just stealing your wife," she explained. "He's stealing from me too, but not in the way you think." I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, bank statements, printed emails. Everything was marked, underlined, organized with surgical precision. "Eduardo, and I have been married for 32 years," Christina continued. We have 3 companies together, properties in 4 countries, investments totaling over $200 million. Everything is in both our names, but in the last 6 months he's been moving assets to offshore accounts, transferring properties, preparing the ground to leave me with nothing. I looked at her in disbelief. And what does that have to do with Raquel? Raquel is part of his plan, Christina said with barely contained bitterness. He has promised her they'll be together, that he's going to divorce me and start a new life with her. But what Raquel doesn't know is that Eduardo doesn't love her. He's just using her as a smokescreen while he strips me of everything we built together. I felt a strange mixture of anger and confusion. And how do you know all this? Because I hired the best private investigators money can buy. She answered without hesitation. I have records of every move he's made in the last 4 months. I know where they meet. I know what hotels they use. I know how much he spends on her. And I know exactly when he plans to execute his final move. She leaned forward with an intensity that gave me goosebumps. Eduardo is going to ask me for a divorce in exactly 3 months, she said. He already has everything prepared. Lawyers hired, falsified documents that leave me with practically nothing. But if I act now, he's going to speed everything up and I'll be vulnerable. I need these 3 months to legally secure what's mine. And you, Mauricio, you need the same thing. What do you mean? I asked, although something inside me was already beginning to understand. If you divorce Raquel now in the heat of the moment, in pain, you're going to make mistakes, Christina explained. You're going to confront her. You're going to shout. You're going to make her and Eduardo get defensive. They'll hide things. They'll lie better. And in the end, she'll end up with half of everything you have, maybe more, because your lawyer won't have time to protect you properly. I swallowed hard. I knew she was right. But if you wait, she continued, if you act coldly, if you document everything, if you build a solid case, Raquel won't be able to take anything that isn't legally hers. You'll have proof, you'll have control, and you'll come out of this protected. I looked at the envelope with the $50 million again, and this I asked, pointing at it. It's your compensation for the time and pain, Christina said. And it's also my way of making sure you'll comply. Because if you act before time, my plan falls apart. I need us both to move at the same time. I need us to be allies, not impulsive victims. I rubbed my face with both hands. This was insane. An hour ago, I was ready to destroy my marriage that very night, and now a complete stranger was asking me to wait 3 months, offering me a fortune in exchange. How do I know this isn't a trap? I finally asked. Christina smiled for the first time, but it wasn't a warm smile because we're both in the same hell, Mauricio, and the only way out of it with dignity is by working together. Christina stood up, smoothed her skirt with a mechanical gesture, and handed me a business card. It was simple, elegant, with just her name and a phone number. Nothing else. Think about it tonight, she said. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, I'm going to call you. If you accept, we move forward with the plan. If not, I take the money and we each face this alone. But I'll warn you of something, Mauricio. Emotional revenge is expensive. Strategic revenge is smart. With that, she left my office with the same serenity she had entered with, leaving me alone with an envelope full of money and a head full of questions that wouldn't stop spinning. That night, I got home later than usual. Raquel was in the kitchen making dinner as if nothing was wrong. She was wearing a new blouse I didn't recognize. She had put on more makeup than usual. She smelled of a perfume she never wore with me. All these details hit me like stones. You're late, she said without looking at me, stirring something in a pot. I thought you were going to let me know. I had a complicated meeting. I lied, leaving my briefcase on the dining room table. Did the kids call? Yes, Rodrigo asked for you. I told him you were busy. Rodrigo, our eldest son, 30 years old, married with a little daughter. What was he going to think when he found out his mother had destroyed our family? And Valeria, our youngest daughter, she had always been closer to Raquel. This was going to destroy her. I sat at the table and watched my wife move around the kitchen with automatic gestures. 28 years. I had seen those hands prepare food 1,000 times. I had heard that voice sing to our children when they were little. I had slept next to that body for almost 3 decades. At what point had everything become a lie? Are you okay? Raquel finally asked, looking at me. You look strange. I'm tired, I replied. Nothing more. We had dinner in silence. She checked her cell phone every 5 minutes. I pretended to read the news on mine. But in reality, I was trying to control the rage rising in my throat. Every time she smiled looking at the screen, I knew it was him. Eduardo, the man who was destroying my life without even knowing me. After dinner, Raquel said she had a headache and went to bed early. I stayed in the study with Christina's envelope on the desk, looking at it as if it were a bomb about to explode. $50 million. 3 months of waiting. A plan involving 2 betrayed people seeking cold justice instead of hot revenge. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside there wasn't cash. Obviously, there was a bank transfer document already signed with all the details ready. $50 million deposited in a trust account in my name, releasable after 90 days if I complied with the terms of the agreement. There was also a handwritten letter from Christina. Mauricio, the letter said, I know this seems crazy to you. It seemed crazy to me too when I discovered Eduardo's infidelity. My first instinct was to confront him, to scream at him, to destroy everything. But then I understood something. The pain we feel when we're betrayed isn't a strategy. It's just pain. And pain makes us stupid. It makes us act fast, badly, without protection. Eduardo and Raquel are waiting for that. They're waiting for us to react like hurt people, because hurt people make mistakes. But we're not going to give them that satisfaction. We're going to be patient. We're going to be meticulous. And when the time comes, we're going to be unstoppable. Trust me, this isn't just about the money. It's about taking back control of our lives. I read that letter 3 times. Every word resonated with something deep inside me. She was right. If I went in screaming tonight, Raquel would cry, ask for forgiveness, manipulate me emotionally. Eduardo would disappear. They would both hide evidence. And I would be left looking like the scorned husband who couldn't handle the situation maturely. But if I waited, if I played the long game, everything would change. I barely slept that night. I stayed awake on the study sofa, staring at the ceiling, thinking about every detail. At 6 in the morning, I made a decision. When Christina called, I was going to say yes. The phone rang at exactly 10 in the morning. I was in the office with the door closed. Mauricio, Christina's voice asked on the other end. I'm in, I replied without beating around the bush. I accept the deal, but I need to know exactly what I have to do. I heard a sigh of relief from the other end of the line. Perfect, she said. The first thing is to understand that these 3 months aren't a vacation, they're work. Hard, silent, strategic work. Are you ready for that? I'm ready. Good. Then let's start with the rules. For the next hour, Christina explained the entire plan to me. It was meticulous, almost military in its precision. She told me I couldn't confront Raquel under any circumstances. I couldn't let her know that I knew. I had to act exactly the same as always. Kind, predictable, boring. I had to be the perfect husband on the surface, while underneath, I collected every piece of evidence I could legally use. Hire a private investigator, Christina instructed me. But not just anyone. You need someone discreet, professional, who understands the law. I'm going to give you my guy's contact. His name is Javier. He's the best. And what exactly will he investigate? Everything, Raquel's movements, places where she meets Eduardo, expenses she makes with credit cards, phone calls, messages, photos, videos if possible. But nothing illegal. Everything has to be admissible in court. Do you understand me? I understand. You also need to talk to your lawyer, Luis, right? Tell him the truth. Tell him, about the infidelity, but that you're not going to act yet. He needs to start preparing the divorce documents now, in secret. Asset valuation, asset protection. Everything ready for when the time comes. And what are you going to do during these 3 months? I asked. Exactly the same thing. Christina replied. Eduardo doesn't know that I know. He still thinks I'm a naive wife at home waiting for him. But while he's having fun with Raquel, I'm securing every property, every investment, every cent he tried to hide. My lawyers are working 24 hours a day. There was a brief silence before she continued. Mauricio, I want you to understand something very important. This isn't easy. You're going to go home every night and you're going to see Raquel act as if nothing is wrong. You're going to hear her lie to your face. You're going to have to kiss her, hug her, pretend everything is fine. And it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt like hell. But that pain is temporary. The protection we're building is permanent. And what if I can't? I asked honestly. What if one day I just explode? You lose, Christina said without softening her words. You lose control. You lose the advantage. And you probably lose a lot of money in the process. That's why I'm giving you $50 million, Mauricio. It's not a gift. It's a constant reminder that there's something bigger at stake than your wounded pride. She was right again. Okay, I said. Finally, I'll do it. I'll wait the 3 months. Excellent. Now write down this number. It's for Javier, the investigator. Call him today and stay in touch with me. Every week we'll talk to coordinate. This is a team effort. We hung up. I sat in my office looking out the window at the city stretching below. I had accepted the strangest deal of my life. 90 days of lies, 90 days of acting, 90 days of controlled pain. But in the end, I was going to come out of this hole. I called Javier that same afternoon. Javier turned out to be exactly what Christina had promised: discreet, professional, and chillingly efficient. We met 2 days later in a cafe far from the center where no one I knew could see us. He was a man of about 45, ordinary looking, the kind of person you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing him. Perfect for his job. Christina brought me up to speed on the situation, he said while drinking his black coffee. You need solid documentation of your wife's infidelity, but everything has to be legal. No hacking, no illegal wiretaps, nothing a judge could dismiss. And how do you do it then? I asked. Traditional surveillance, photographs from public places, videos of encounters in hotels, restaurants, places where they have no expectation of privacy, tracking patterns, recording schedules, everything that can prove a continuous and systematic relationship. He took out a tablet and showed me a digital calendar. According to the information Christina gave me, your wife meets Eduardo on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoon and occasionally on Saturdays. Is that correct? I felt a knot in my stomach. Tuesdays and Thursdays. The days Raquel said she went to the gym or to see her sister. The Saturdays, she supposedly had commitments with friends. Yes, I confirmed with a tense voice. Those days, she always has excuses to go out. Perfect. I'll follow her for the next few weeks. You'll have photos, videos, detailed reports of every move. I'll also investigate if there are shared expenses, gifts, hotel reservations in her name. It all adds up. How much time will you need? A month should be enough to have a solid case, but I can continue until you tell me to stop. Christina has already covered my fees for 3 full months. Of course she had. Christina left nothing to chance. That same week, I met with Luis in his office. He closed the door, asked not to be disturbed, and looked at me with the seriousness of someone about to hear something terrible. Tell me everything, he said simply. I told him the whole story: Raquel's infidelity, the discovery, Christina's appearance, the $50 million, the 3-month plan. Luis listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes, his expression growing more and more serious. This is unusual, he said finally, but strategically brilliant. If you really wait and document everything well, you'll have a very strong position in the divorce. How strong? Raquel won't be able to claim half of your assets if we can prove confirmed infidelity. Depending on the state laws and how your assets are structured, you could come out with between 70 and 80% of everything, maybe more. Luis opened a file on his computer. I'm going to need you to bring me complete documentation of all your assets, properties, investments, bank accounts, stocks, everything. We're going to do a thorough evaluation, and we're going to start protecting what we can legally. I'm also going to prepare the divorce documents now, but we won't file them until you give me the signal. And what if she suspects something? That's why it's crucial that you act normal. Not colder, not warmer. Exactly the same as always. Any change in your behavior will raise red flags. I left Luis's office with a mix of relief and terror. The plan was in motion, the gears were turning, but now came the hardest part. Going home every night and pretending my world hadn't fallen apart. The first week was a psychological hell. Every time Raquel smiled, I wondered if she was thinking about him. Every time she left the house dressed up, I knew exactly where she was going. Every "I love you" she said to me sounded like a stab wrapped in velvet. The first Tuesday, when she announced she was going to the gym, I had to bite my tongue not to scream the truth at her. I watched her leave with her gym bag, her tight workout clothes, her hair tied up in a perfect ponytail. 2 hours later, Javier sent me the first photos. Raquel entering a boutique hotel downtown. Eduardo waiting for her in the lobby, the two of them getting into the elevator holding hands. Leaving 3 hours later, her with her hair down. Him adjusting his tie. I looked at those photos on my phone and felt something break inside me. It wasn't just the confirmation of what I already knew. It was the irrefutable visual evidence that the woman I had shared my life with was sharing her body with another man. That night, when Raquel came home from the gym, she asked me how my day had been. I told her, "Fine, boring, same old." She kissed me on the cheek and went to take a shower. I stayed in the living room, clenching my fists until my knuckles turned white. I called Christina that night. I needed to talk to someone who understood. "It's harder than I thought," I told her, without preamble. "I know." She replied with a voice that sounded tired. "I'm going through the same thing." Eduardo came home late last night. He smelled of perfume that isn't mine. He kissed me on the forehead and asked me what I had cooked for dinner, as if nothing happened. "How do you stand it?" "By thinking about the end," Christina said. "Thinking about the moment I'm going to put all the documents in front of him and see his face when he realizes I'm not the idiot he thought I was. That thought keeps me sane." She was right. Again, the present pain was an investment for future justice. The weeks began to pass in a strange and torturous routine. During the day, I was Mauricio, the businessman, focused on my work. At night, I was Mauricio, the husband, making dinners, asking about Raquel's day, watching TV together on the couch. And in secret, I was Mauricio, the strategist, reviewing Javier's reports, coordinating with Luis, talking to Christina. Javier sent me weekly updates. The evidence was piling up, photos in different hotels, videos of them walking through parks holding hands, phone call records that lasted for hours, text messages that Raquel deleted, but that Javier had legally managed to recover through phone company records with a prior court order. Luis was building an airtight case. He had cataloged all my assets. He had protected the most important investments. He had prepared documents that guaranteed my premarital properties would be excluded from any division. Everything was ready. Only the moment was missing. Christina and I became something like war allies. We spoke every 3 or 4 days, sharing information, supporting each other when the weight of the lie became unbearable. She told me how Eduardo had started talking about simplifying his life and making important changes. I told her how Raquel had mentioned we needed to talk about our future, but always found excuses to postpone that conversation. "They're getting ready to leave us," Christina told me one night. "They're building up the courage to take the step. They'll probably do it together. Coordinated. A dramatic exit where they're the protagonists and we're the obstacles they finally overcame." "Not if we move first," I replied. Exactly. A month and a half into the plan, something changed. Raquel started acting differently, more distant, more impatient, less careful with her lies. One Saturday, she told me she was going to spend the day with her sister Isabel. But Isabel called me that same afternoon asking if Raquel was with me, because she wasn't answering her messages. I confronted her that night, but gently, without aggression. "Isabel called me looking for you," I told her while we were having dinner. Raquel tensed for a split second, but recovered quickly. "Oh, I changed my plans at the last minute. I met Sarah downtown. I forgot to tell Isabel." Lie after lie. She wasn't even trying anymore. The days became a kind of absurd play, where we all acted out roles that no longer fit us. Raquel played the dedicated wife. I played the trusting husband. And between us floated a lie so big it took up more space than any real conversation. But while she believed her secret was safe, I was building a complete arsenal of documented truths. Javier had exceeded all my expectations. The folders he handed me each week were getting thicker, more detailed, more devastating. They weren't just photos of Raquel and Eduardo entering hotels. There were patterns, timelines, movement maps. Javier had discovered that they met at the same boutique hotel on Tuesdays, but on Thursdays they alternated between two different restaurants on the outskirts of the city. Saturdays were riskier. Sometimes they went to a cabin that Eduardo had rented in the name of a shell company. "Your wife is careless," Javier told me at one of our meetings. "But he is meticulous. Eduardo knows what he's doing. He's done this before." "What do you mean?" "I found records that he rented that same cabin 5 years ago under the same scheme, different dates, different frequency, probably another extramarital affair. This guy has an operating manual for his infidelities." That information hit me in a strange way. Raquel wasn't special to Eduardo. She was just the next in a line of women he used while keeping his married life and finances intact. She thought they were building something real, something deep. He was simply repeating a pattern. I told Christina that night. "I know," she said with a bitter laugh. "My investigator found the same thing. Eduardo is a professional at deceit. And the worst part is that Raquel has no idea she's being manipulated in exactly the same way I was for years." "You knew about others?" I asked. "I suspected, but I never had proof until now. And honestly, Mauricio, part of me didn't want to know. It's easier to live in ignorance when you have a comfortable life. But this time was different. This time he went too far. He started moving money, hiding assets. It was no longer just about sex or cheap romance. It was about destroying me financially. And your lawyers, how are they doing?" "They're ready. I have documentation of every suspicious transfer he made, every property he tried to take out of our joint assets, every offshore account he opened thinking I wouldn't find out. When I file the papers, Eduardo is going to discover that he completely underestimated his wife. There was something satisfying in hearing her speak with such confidence. Christina had gone from being the betrayed wife to the relentless strategist, and I was following the same path. Luis called me one afternoon with important news. "Mauricio, I need you to come to my office. We need to talk about the final structure of the divorce." I went that same afternoon. Luis had a mountain of documents on his desk, organized in colored folders. "This is it," he said, gently tapping the pile with his knuckles. "Complete valuation of your assets. Protection of premarital properties. Documentation of the infidelity. Testimonies from witnesses who saw Raquel and Eduardo together. Financial records showing she spent joint money on gifts for him. We have an airtight case. What does that mean in real numbers?" I asked. Luis leaned back in his chair and looked at me with professional seriousness. "If we file this now, with all the evidence we have, Raquel will be in a very weak position, in the best case for her. And only if she gets an aggressive lawyer. She might claim 30% of the assets acquired during the marriage. But I think we can reduce that to 20%, maybe less. Your premarital properties are completely protected. Your business is protected. Your personal investments are protected." He paused before continuing. "Mauricio, with what you'll keep after the divorce, plus Christina's $50 million, you'll come out of this not just whole, but financially stronger than you were before." I should have felt victorious. I should have smiled. But I just felt a huge emptiness because, yes, I was going to keep my money and my properties, but I had lost 28 years of my life with someone I thought loved me. "When do we file?" I asked. "Whenever you tell me to. But according to the agreement with Christina, it has to be within the next 3 weeks. She already has a confirmed date." "Yes, she's filing her papers on the 15th of next month, a Friday. She says she wants Eduardo to receive the notification at his office in front of his partners." Luis smiled for the first time in the whole meeting. "Christina is brutal. I like her style. And when do you want Raquel to receive hers?" I thought for a moment. I wanted it to hurt. I wanted it to be unexpected. I wanted it to be a moment when she was so confident in her lies that the truth would hit her like a train. The same day, I said finally, the same Friday but not at home. I want them to reach her when she's with him, when she's at one of their meetings. I want them both to receive the news at the same time. Luis wrote something in his notebook. "It can be done. Javier can track her that day, and we can coordinate with a professional server." It'll be expensive, but effective. I don't care about the cost. That night, I called Christina and told her the plan. She was silent for a few seconds before answering. It's perfect, she said finally. Poetic even. They both get their divorces on the same day, at the same moment. They'll be together when their worlds collapse, and they'll discover that they not only lost their partners, but they also have each other, which is exactly what they wanted. Except now, they'll be broke and exposed. Broke? I asked. Eduardo has money. Had. Christina corrected with barely contained satisfaction. When my lawyers are done with him, he'll keep just enough to live decently. Nothing more. And Raquel, well, she's going to discover that the man she left everything for has nothing to offer her, except empty promises. There was something dark about that plan, something that went beyond simple justice. But I didn't care. They had chosen to betray us. We were just choosing to protect ourselves. The last 2 weeks were the hardest. Raquel was increasingly anxious, more absent. Several times, I found her looking at her phone with an expression that oscillated between happiness and guilt. One night, I heard her talking on the phone in the garden in a low, whispering voice. Soon, I heard her say, very soon. I just need to find the right moment to tell him. Yes, I love you too. I can't wait for us to start our life together. I stood on the other side of the door, listening to my wife plan our end, while I had already planned hers. It was surreal, it was painful, but it was also necessary. 3 days before the designated Friday, Christina called me with urgency in her voice. Mauricio, I have information. Eduardo is going to propose to Raquel. This Friday, he has the ring, he has everything planned. He's going to ask her to marry him after they both divorce us. I felt a mix of anger and bitter satisfaction. How do you know that? My investigator tapped his personal assistant's phone. She made the reservation at the restaurant, ordered champagne, coordinated everything. Eduardo really thinks he's going to get away with it. Even better, I said with a calm that surprised me. Let him have the ring in his hand when he receives the divorce papers. Let Raquel be dreaming of her perfect future when she discovers that future has just turned into a legal nightmare. You're cold, Mauricio, Christina said, but there was approval in her voice. I like it. I learned from the best. On Thursday night, one day before the end, I sat in my study and reviewed everything. 3 months of acting. 3 months of contained pain. 3 months of building a case that Raquel couldn't fight. Tomorrow everything was going to end, or rather, tomorrow everything was going to start again. Friday dawned with a clear sky, one of those perfect days that seem designed for special occasions. How ironic. Raquel got up early, more cheerful than I'd seen her in months. She got ready with special care, choosing a dress I didn't recognize, probably bought for this occasion. She did her makeup in front of the mirror with precise, almost ritualistic movements. You look beautiful, I told her from the bathroom door, because it was what I had to say because I was still acting. She smiled, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I had fallen in love with 30 years ago. But it was just a mirage. That woman no longer existed, or maybe she never really had. Thanks, she replied. I have an important lunch today with some friends. We're going to celebrate things. Celebrate. The word floated in the air between us, loaded with meanings she thought I didn't understand, but I knew exactly what she was celebrating. She thought today was going to be the beginning of her new life with Eduardo. She thought she was going to receive a marriage proposal. She thought she would finally be able to leave the burden of our dead marriage behind. Enjoy it, I told her, and I kissed her on the forehead as I had 1,000 times before. She left the house around noon. I watched her drive away, knowing that Javier was already following her from 3 cars back. Luis was in his office with the server ready. Christina was executing her part of the plan simultaneously. Everyone was in position. The mechanism we had built for 3 months was about to be activated. I poured myself a coffee and sat on the terrace. I had my phone in my hand, waiting for updates. The first one came at 12:15. Javier, Target has arrived at Bella Vista restaurant. Eduardo is already inside. Table reserved by the window. Very romantic. I replied with a simple confirmed. Proceed. The second update came 20 minutes later. Javier, they're having lunch. He ordered champagne. She's smiling a lot. Definitely something big is going to happen. Luis texted me almost at the same time. Server en route. ETA, 15 minutes. My heart was pounding, but not from nerves. It was anticipation. It was the end of a wait that had been both eternal and insufficient. 3 months preparing for this moment, and still I felt I wasn't ready. Is anyone ever really ready to destroy their own life, even to rebuild it better? Christina called. I answered immediately. It's done, she said with a tense voice. Eduardo just received the papers at his office. He was in a meeting with his partners. The server came in, asked for identity confirmation, and handed him the envelope in front of everyone. My lawyers timed it perfectly. How did he react? According to my contact, he turned pale. He tried to play it cool, said it was a minor personal matter, but everyone saw his face. He left the meeting almost running. He's probably trying to call me now. Are you going to answer? Not in a million years. Let him rot in his desperation. There was a brief silence before she continued in a softer voice. Mauricio, thank you for trusting me, for waiting, for not giving up when it got tough. Today we take back control of our lives. Thanks to you, Christina, without your plan, I would have reacted like an idiot and lost everything. We both did well. Now let's enjoy the end. We hung up. I looked at the clock. 1:10 p.m. At any moment, Raquel would receive her surprise. Javier's update arrived at 1:23. Javier, it just happened. Eduardo took out a small box, got down on one knee. She covered her mouth with her hands. She's crying. He put the ring on her. They're kissing. The other diners are applauding. I felt a stab in my chest, but I pushed it down. This was part of the plan, to let them climb to the peak of their false happiness before throwing them into the abyss. Javier again. 2 minutes later, server just entered the restaurant, approaching the table. I closed my eyes. I could picture it perfectly. Raquel with the sparkling ring on her finger, still drying her happy tears. Eduardo ordering more champagne to toast. And then a man in a formal suit approaching with a manila envelope. Raquel Jimenez de Vasquez, the server would ask. She would look at him confused. Yes, that's me. You need to sign here, legal notification, and he would hand her the envelope, and her whole perfect world would collapse in the time it took her to open it. The phone vibrated. Javier again. Javier, it's open. She read the first page, turned white. Eduardo is asking her what's wrong. She can't speak. She passed him the papers. He's reading them too. He seems to be struggling to understand now. He took out his phone. He's dialing like crazy. No one is answering. Raquel is crying, but not from happiness anymore. He looks furious. They're arguing. People are staring at them. A dark part of me wished I was there watching their faces, but no. This was better, to let the chaos unfold without me. From a distance, while I remained calm and in control, Luis called me. Mauricio, the documents were served. Raquel has 72 hours to respond formally, but with the evidence we have, her lawyer, whoever she gets, is going to advise her to negotiate rather than fight. This is going to be quick, perfect, and the assets, all protected. I made the last transfers this morning. Even if she tries to freeze accounts, the main ones are already beyond her legal reach. We played within the law, but we played smart. Thanks, Luis, for everything. It's my job, but it's also a pleasure to see real justice from time to time. The next few hours were strange. I stayed home and waited. I knew Raquel would eventually come. I didn't know in what state, but she would come. She needed to confront me. She needed answers. She needed to know how I'd found out everything. She arrived around 5 in the afternoon. I heard her car brake sharply in the garage. The door opened violently. Her footsteps echoed in the hallway, fast, furious. When she entered the living room, where I was sitting calmly reading a book, her face was a mask of fury and tears. "What is this?" she screamed, throwing the divorce papers on the coffee table. "Divorce, documented infidelity, asset protection. What the hell did you do, Mauricio?" I closed the book calmly and looked at her. I really looked at her, maybe for the first time in months. Her makeup was smeared, the expensive dress was wrinkled, the engagement ring still shining obscenely on her finger. She was pathetic and furious at the same time. I protected myself. I said simply, something I should have done 3 months ago when I discovered your affair with Eduardo. Her mouth fell open in genuine shock. 3 months. You knew for 3 months? Yes, Raquel, 3 months. I knew about the hotels, the lies, the Tuesdays and Thursdays, the cabin on Saturdays, about every message you sent him, about every time you kissed me and then went to kiss him. I knew everything, and you didn't say anything. Why didn't you say anything? I stood up, staying calm, in control, because if I had said something, you would have cried, you would have asked for forgiveness, you would have manipulated the situation. And I, being the lovesick fool I was for 28 years, might have believed you, might have forgiven you. And in 6 months we would be right here again, but with me in a much more vulnerable position. Raquel sank onto the couch, still processing. So it was all a lie. These last 3 months, every smile, every conversation, everything. Oh, I said with a bitter laugh. Now you're worried about lies. How interesting coming from you. It's not the same. No, explain the difference to me. She couldn't. She just sat there crying, trying to find words that didn't exist because there was no difference. We had both lied. The difference was that my lie protected my future. Hers destroyed our past. Eduardo, she said finally, he got papers today too. From Christina, you know her. Yes, you worked together. You planned this together. Yes. Raquel laughed. A hysterical, broken laugh. So it was a trap. From the beginning, you guys set us up. No, Raquel, you set your own trap. We just waited for you to fall in completely before closing it. Raquel sat on the sofa, staring into space, as if she were just now processing that her perfect world had just collapsed in a matter of hours. Eduardo's ring was still on her finger, shining in the afternoon light coming through the window. It was almost comical. For hours ago, she had been proposed to. Now she was facing a divorce that would leave her with much less than she had expected. I don't understand, she finally said with a weak voice. If you knew 3 months ago, why wait? Why torture yourself watching me go out every Tuesday and every Thursday? Why pretend everything was okay? I sat in front of her, keeping a physical and emotional distance. Because emotion is a bad advisor. Raquel, if I had acted the day I discovered your messages, I would have exploded, I would have yelled, I would have let my pain dictate my decisions, and in the process, I would have made legal mistakes that would have benefited you. You would have gotten a lawyer who would have painted the situation as a failed marriage due to both our faults. You would have fought for half of everything and probably would have won. I took out my phone and opened the folder where Javier had compiled all the evidence, but I waited, I documented, I built a case that no lawyer can dismantle. I have photos of you too at 7 different hotels. I have videos of 18 different encounters. I have phone call records totaling over 200 hours in 3 months. I have credit card statements showing gifts you bought him with our joint account. I have testimonies from waiters, receptionists, cleaning staff. I showed her some of the photos. She looked at them and the tears started falling again, but this time they were quieter, more resigned. All of that is legal. I continued, admissible in court, irrefutable. So when your lawyer sees this file, he's going to tell you exactly what mine already confirmed to me. You don't have a case. You can fight, you can make a scene, you can try to negotiate, but in the end you're going to lose because the evidence is absolute. Raquel closed her eyes as if wanting to wake up from a nightmare. And Christina, she did the same with Eduardo, something even more elaborate. Eduardo wasn't just lying to you and her. He was moving money, hiding assets, preparing to leave her with nothing after 32 years of marriage. Christina spent these 3 months securing every property, every investment, every cent he tried to steal. When Eduardo's lawyers finish reviewing the documents, he's going to discover that he not only lost his wife, but he also lost most of his fortune. I saw something change in Raquel's expression. Confusion at first, then slow, painful understanding. Eduardo told me he was going to leave Christina with just enough that she deserved nothing because she never worked, because he had built everything. He told me that when we were together, we were going to have an incredible life, that we were going to travel, that we were going to be free. He lied to you, I said without softening the words. Eduardo is a professional liar. You're not the first. Raquel, my investigator found evidence of at least 2 previous affairs. He has a pattern. He rents the same cabin, uses the same phrases, makes the same promises. You were just next in line. I saw her break, not all at once, but slowly, like a building collapsing floor by floor. She put her hands to her face and cried in a way she hadn't cried before. It wasn't fury or indignation. It was pure defeat. It was the realization that she had bet her entire future on a man who never had any real intentions with her. He loved me, she whispered between sobs. I know he loved me. I saw it in his eyes. I felt his love. What you felt was what he wanted you to feel. He's good at that. That's why it took Christina years to realize. That's why you fell so easily. Raquel raised her head and looked at me with something resembling contempt. And you what? You spent 3 months lying to me, kissing me, acting like you loved me. Isn't that cruel? Isn't that manipulation? It's protection. I answered firmly. There's a huge difference between lying to destroy and lying to survive. You lie to have your affair without consequences. I lied to make sure that when everything came to light, I wouldn't be destroyed. She also took off Eduardo's ring with trembling hands and threw it on the coffee table. It rolled a couple of times before falling to the floor with a soft metallic sound. And now what? She asked with a broken voice. What am I supposed to do now? You get a lawyer, you review the divorce documents, you accept the terms, or you try to negotiate. Although I'll warn you, there isn't much room. You find a place to live, because this house is mine, acquired before the marriage. And you get on with your life, I suppose, with or without Eduardo. That's not my problem anymore. Do you hate me? She asked suddenly. The question took me by surprise. I took a moment before answering. No, I don't hate you, Raquel. I'm angry. Yes, I'm disappointed. I'm hurt, but hatred requires emotional energy I no longer want to spend on you. What I mostly feel is indifference, and that's probably worse than hatred. She nodded slowly, as if she understood. She stood up with difficulty, took her bag, and walked towards the door. Before leaving, she stopped and turned to me one last time. The $50 million Christina mentioned in the documents, is that real? Yes. She paid you to wait. She paid me so we could both protect ourselves properly, and it worked. Raquel shook her head, somewhere between disbelieving and defeated. So, you really planned everything from day one. From day one. She left without another word. I heard her car start and drive away. The house fell into absolute silence. I sat down again, feeling the weight of 3 months of acting finally lift from my shoulders. But I didn't feel relief. I felt empty. My phone rang. It was Christina. It's over. She asked. Yes. Raquel was here. She left 5 minutes ago. How do you feel? Strange, liberated, but empty. It makes sense. Perfect sense. I feel the same. Eduardo tried to call me 17 times. I sent him a single message. Talk to my lawyers. Then I blocked his number. Do you think he'll fight? He'll try, but my lawyers are better than his, and the evidence I have is devastating. It'll take him months just to understand how much he lost. There was a comfortable silence between us before Christina continued. Mauricio, I know this wasn't easy. I know there were nights you wanted to throw it all to hell and just scream the truth at Raquel. But you did it. You waited. You acted with intelligence instead of emotion. And now you're on the other side, protected. I wouldn't have made it without you. I admitted, without your plan, without your experience, I would have been the idiot who loses everything in an emotional divorce. We saved each other, she said, simply, and that's something beautiful in the midst of all this mess. We agreed to talk in a few days after we both had time to process. I hung up and sat in the living room looking at Eduardo's ring still on the floor. Such a small object that had represented so many lies. I picked it up and put it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'd return it, or maybe I'd throw it away. I hadn't decided yet. That night, I slept alone in my bed, in my house for the first time in 28 years, knowing it was truly just mine. Not shared, not contaminated by lies, just mine. The following weeks were a bureaucratic and emotional whirlwind. Raquel hired a lawyer, just as I knew she would. His name was Roberto Salinas, known in the city for being aggressive and taking on difficult cases. But when Luis and he met to review the evidence, Salinas's aggressiveness quickly evaporated. He called Luis 2 days after that meeting and said he was going to recommend his client accept the proposed terms with minimal changes. He has no case, Salinas told Luis, and Luis repeated it to me word for word. The evidence is airtight. If we go to trial, your client will come out worse than she is now with the agreement. And frankly, Mauricio is being more generous to her than he legally has to be. That was true. Despite everything, I wasn't vengeful to the point of leaving her on the street. Raquel was going to receive a reasonable amount of money, enough to rebuild her life with dignity. Not the fortune she would have gotten in a traditional divorce, but not misery either. It was justice, not cruelty. The situation with Eduardo and Cristina was different. Eduardo had made the mistake of completely underestimating his wife and was now paying the price brutally. Cristina's lawyers had presented documentation showing that he had tried to transfer assets worth over $80 million to offshore accounts and shell companies. That wasn't just marital infidelity, it was financial fraud within the marriage. Cristina called me every couple of days to update me, and each time her voice sounded stronger, more confident. Eduardo lost his business partners. She told me one afternoon, when they found out about all the illegal fund movements, they kicked him off the board. They're doing a full audit of the company. If they find more irregularities, they could sue him criminally. And how is he reacting? As expected, fury, denial. He's blaming everyone but himself. He tried to contact me through mutual acquaintances, offering to negotiate, but my lawyers were very clear. There's no negotiation. Either he accepts the terms or we'll see him in court, where he'll fare even worse. And Raquel, do you know anything about her and Eduardo? Cristina laughed bitterly. Oh, that's the most pathetic part of all. At first, they tried to stay together. Eduardo promised her they would get through this, that when everything calmed down, they would be together as planned. But Raquel isn't stupid. Eventually, she realized Eduardo has nothing to offer her. He has no money, no stability, no promising future, only legal debts and a destroyed reputation. So they broke up, according to my sources. Yes, a week ago, Raquel told him she needed space to process everything. Eduardo tried to convince her to stay, but she had seen the truth. The man who had promised her the world couldn't even offer her a basic future. There was something deeply satisfying in knowing that their relationship had collapsed under the weight of its own lies. Not because of my or Cristina's revenge, but because it had never been real in the first place. It had been a fantasy built on betrayals and empty promises. A month after the documents were served, Raquel came to the house to pick up her things. She arrived with Valeria, our daughter, who had called me the previous week crying, asking how all this had happened. I had to explain to her with a broken heart that her mother had made decisions that had destroyed our marriage. Valeria was devastated, but she was also angry with Raquel. Rodrigo, our eldest son, had been more direct in his judgment. Mom did this, he told me over the phone. You just protected yourself. I don't blame you for anything. Seeing Raquel enter what had been her home for almost 3 decades, now as a temporary visitor, was strange. She moved through the rooms with a mix of familiarity and distance, packing clothes, books, photographs. Valeria helped her in silence, with a tense expression. I stayed away, letting them do their work. I had nothing to say to Raquel. We had already said everything that needed to be said, but as she was about to leave, after loading the last box in her car, she approached me. Mauricio, she said with a tired voice. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I need to tell you. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Not for being caught, not for the consequences, but for doing this to you, for throwing 28 years in the trash for something that wasn't even real. I looked into her eyes. She was thinner, paler. She had deep dark circles. The affair and its consequences had consumed her physically. I appreciate the apology, I said honestly, but it doesn't change anything. What you did, you did. Decisions have consequences, and we're both going to have to live with them. I know, she replied. I just wanted you to know that I regret it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. She nodded and left. Valeria stayed a moment longer. Are you going to be okay, Dad? She asked, hugging me. I'm going to be okay, my love. This is hard, but I'm going to be okay. And I meant it. For the first time in months. I really believed I was going to be okay. The following months brought a new routine. The divorce was finalized without much drama. Raquel accepted the terms, signed the papers, and we were officially no longer married. She moved into a smaller apartment in another part of the city. She got a job as a manager at a department store. It was a completely different life than the one she had imagined, but it was her life now. Eduardo lost almost everything. The legal battle with Christina left him with barely 20% of what he once had. His partners sued him for corporate embezzlement. His reputation in business circles was destroyed. The last Christina told me about him, he was trying to rebuild his life from scratch, working as an independent consultant, living in a modest apartment, completely removed from the world of luxury he was used to. Christina, on the other hand, flourished. With her assets secured and her freedom regained, she began to travel, to invest in projects she had always wanted to do, but that Eduardo had never supported. We continued to talk regularly, not as accomplices, but as genuine friends who had gone through an emotional war together. Do you know what's the craziest thing of all? She told me one evening during one of our calls, "I'm happier alone now than I was in 30 years of marriage. Eduardo gave me financial security and social status, but he took away my freedom and respect. Now I have all three. I'm happy for you." I told her sincerely. "And you, Mauricio, how do you really feel?" I thought about the question. How'd I feel? I had lost my wife, my marriage, the illusion of the life I had built, but I had gained something more valuable, my dignity, my autonomy, my protected future. "I feel free," I finally replied. Still hurt. Yes, but free. And that's more than I had 6 months ago when I was married to someone who didn't love me. That's all that matters. One afternoon, 3 months after the final divorce, I was in my study organizing papers when I found the original letter Christina had left me on the first day. I reread it with a completely new perspective. The pain we feel when we're betrayed isn't a strategy. It's just pain, and pain makes us stupid. She was right. If I had acted out of pain, I would have lost everything, but I acted out of intelligence, out of patience, out of strategy, and that had made all the difference. I put the letter away again, this time not as a reminder of revenge, but as a reminder that emotions, as valid as they are, aren't always the best advisors. Sometimes the head has to guide the heart. Sometimes waiting is the most powerful decision you can make. 6 months after the divorce, my life had found a rhythm I never imagined, but one that I surprisingly liked. The house, which before felt too big and full of painful memories, had become my refuge. I redecorated some rooms, not to erase the past, but to create a present that was genuinely mine. The study became my favorite place, with new books, a comfortable chair by the window, and a peace I hadn't felt in years. The $50 million Christina had given me remained untouched in the trust account. At first, I thought about rejecting it once everything was over, giving the money back to her, and closing that chapter completely. But Christina flatly refused. "That money is yours, Mauricio," she told me firmly during a dinner we had at an elegant restaurant downtown. It wasn't a bribe. It was an investment in mutual justice. Without your cooperation, without your patience, my plan wouldn't have worked so perfectly. You earned it. But I don't need it, I argued. I came out of the divorce well. My businesses are stable. I have more than enough. Then invest it, donate it, use it for something you care about, but don't give it back to me. It would be an insult to everything we achieved together. I ended up accepting. I used part of the money to create an educational fund for my future grandchildren, ensuring their parents' decisions wouldn't affect their opportunities. Another part, I invested in projects I had always wanted to explore, but had postponed because I was focused on marriage and family stability. And a considerable portion I donated to organizations that help people going through complicated divorces, especially those without the resources to defend themselves legally. Christina became one of my best friends. It was strange to think that our relationship had begun with shared betrayals and had transformed into something genuine and valuable. We saw each other for dinner every couple of weeks, talked on the phone frequently, and she became someone whose advice I deeply valued. "Do you ever think about falling in love again?" She asked me one night as we drank wine on the terrace of her new house, a beautiful property with a view of the mountains that she had bought after the divorce. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I'm afraid. Not afraid of being betrayed again, that's always a risk, but afraid of not being able to fully trust again, of always looking for signs, always being suspicious. It's normal, Christina said. I feel the same, but I also know I don't want Eduardo and his betrayal to define the rest of my life. I don't want to give him that power. If one day we meet someone worthwhile, we have to be willing to try again. With more wisdom. Yes, with better boundaries, definitely. But to try. She was right, as she almost always was. My relationship with my children had strengthened. Rodrigo would come visit me with his wife and my granddaughter almost every Sunday. We'd cook together, play with the little one, talk about important and trivial things. He never mentioned Raquel unless I did first, and I appreciated that consideration. Valeria had taken longer to process everything. She had been closer to her mother, and the betrayal had hurt her in a different way. But over time, she began to understand that the divorce hadn't been an act of revenge on my part, but a necessary response to decisions Raquel had made alone. Slowly, our relationship was also rebuilt, more honest than before, without the illusions of family perfection we had maintained for years. Raquel and I had no direct contact, except when absolutely necessary for matters related to the children. I knew from Valeria that she was dating someone new, a divorced man her age who worked in education. I was happy for her, not condescendingly or sarcastically, but genuinely. We all deserved a second chance at happiness, even those who had made huge mistakes. Eduardo, according to the updates Christina occasionally received, hadn't been so lucky. His fall had been more pronounced, and apparently, he was struggling with depression. He had tried to contact Christina several times through mutual acquaintances, not to apologize, but to negotiate a better financial settlement. Each time, Christina had refused contact. "He's not my problem anymore," she would say simply. One Saturday afternoon, almost 8 months after everything, I was in a bookstore downtown looking for a gift for Rodrigo when I saw someone familiar. It was Raquel. She was in the romance novels section, browsing a book with a focused expression. She hadn't seen me yet. I had a moment of decision. I could leave quietly, avoid the awkward interaction, or I could be an adult about it. I walked towards her. "Hello, Raquel," I said softly. She looked up surprised. For a second, I saw panic in her eyes, but then it softened. "Mauricio, hi. I didn't expect to see you here. It's a big city, but not that big," I said with a small smile. "How have you been?" "Good, better, different." She closed the book she was looking at. "And you same, good, funny new rhythm." There was a silence that could have been awkward, but was actually just silence. Two people who once shared everything and were now essentially strangers. "Valeria told me you're seeing someone." I said, "I'm glad." Raquel seemed genuinely surprised by my tone. "Thanks. It's still new. Nothing serious, but it's good. It's honest, and that feels good. You deserve it. We all deserve honesty." She nodded, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. "Mauricio, I know I've told you this before, but I need to say it again. I'm so sorry for everything that happened, not just for me, but for you, for the years we lost, for the family I broke. If I could go back, but you can't." I interrupted her gently. "Neither of us can. What happened? Happened. And we both have to move on from where we are now, not from where we wish we had been." "Do you forgive me?" she asked with a broken voice. I thought about it honestly before answering. "I'm in the process of forgiving you, not because what you did is okay, but because carrying anger and resentment forever only hurts me. So yes, eventually I'll forgive you completely. Maybe I already have, and I'm just still processing it." Raquel smiled through her tears. "You're a better person than I deserve. It's not about deserving. It's about choosing how we want to live the rest of our lives." We said goodbye with a brief but genuine hug. When I left the bookstore, I felt something release inside me. It wasn't that I had forgiven her in that exact moment, but it was the beginning of the end of the pain, and that was enough. That night, I called Christina and told her about the encounter. "I think that's beautiful," she said. "Not all endings need to be dramatic or full of hatred. Sometimes the end is simply two people acknowledging that what they had is over and that they both deserve to move on." "Have you seen Eduardo?" "No, and I have no plans to. My situation is different from yours, Mauricio. Eduardo didn't just betray me. He tried to rob me. He tried to destroy me financially. That's something I can't and won't forgive. Maybe one day I'll feel indifference towards him, but active forgiveness, no, and I'm at peace with that. I respected her position. Each person had to find their own way to close their wounds. The following months continued to bring gradual healing. I started going out more, reconnecting with friends I had neglected during the marriage. I started a new business project I had always wanted to explore but had postponed. I signed up for Italian cooking classes, something completely out of my comfort zone, but which turned out to be incredibly fun. And slowly, very slowly, I began to imagine the possibility of eventually opening myself up to a new relationship. I wasn't actively looking, but I wasn't closed off to the idea either. I had learned that love, when it's real, is worth the risk, but I had also learned that love without respect, without honesty, without real reciprocity, is worthless. One afternoon, a year after it all began, I sat on my terrace with a glass of wine and watched the sunset. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the elaborate plan, the 3 months of acting, the confrontation, the divorce, the rebuilding, and I realized something fundamental. The wait had been the greatest gift I had given myself. If someone had told me 2 years ago that I would be where I am now, sitting on the terrace of my house with a tranquility I hadn't felt in decades, I wouldn't have believed them. Life has a strange way of taking you down paths you never imagined, destroying what you thought was solid and building something completely new on the ruins. It's been 15 months since Christina walked into my office with an envelope full of promises and a plan that sounded like madness. 15 months since I made the hardest decision of my life. To wait, not to act out of pain, not to explode out of rage, simply to wait, to document, and to protect myself with intelligence instead of emotion. And that decision changed everything. Today, as I write this in my journal, something I started as therapy and that became a way to process everything I've been through, I can honestly say that I'm grateful. Not grateful for Raquel's betrayal. Obviously, that will always be a scar on my story, but grateful for the clarity that came after. Grateful for discovering who I really was when all the illusions were stripped away. For 28 years, I was Raquel's husband, the father of Rodrigo and Valeria, the stable and predictable family man. And all those things were real, but they weren't complete. There were parts of me I had buried to keep the peace, to be the man I was supposed to be. Now, finally, I'm discovering who I am when I don't have to act for anyone but myself. Christina and I are still close friends. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the anniversary of our alliance, as she calls it with dark humor. We went to dinner at the same restaurant where Raquel and Eduardo received their divorce notices. It was a deliberate choice, a way to reclaim that space and turn it into something of our own, something that represented victory instead of betrayal. You know what's the most ironic thing of all? Christina told me that night as we toasted with champagne. Eduardo and Raquel did us a favor. They got us out of marriages that were already dead, but that we didn't have the courage to end. They forced us to face truths we had been avoiding for years. She was right. My marriage to Raquel had been slowly dying long before Eduardo appeared. We had become roommates who shared a space, but not real intimacy, who talked about family logistics, but never about dreams or fears. The infidelity didn't destroy something perfect. It simply revealed something that was already broken. Do you ever regret the plan? I asked her, having waited 3 months, having been so calculating. Christina took a sip of her champagne before answering. Never. If I had acted on emotion, Eduardo would have won. He would have hidden more money. He would have manipulated the situation. He would have come out better off. But because we waited, because we were strategic, we both came out protected. No, Mauricio, I don't regret a single day of those 3 months. They were the 3 hardest months of my life, but they were also my salvation. That same feeling lives in me. The 3 months of acting were a psychological hell. Seeing Raquel leave the house knowing exactly where she was going, kissing her knowing she was kissing someone else, pretending everything was fine when everything was falling apart. It was torture, but it was torture with a purpose, and that purpose saved me from making stupid decisions that would have ruined my future. My kids are fine. Rodrigo became my confidant and my friend. Not just my son. Valeria, after a difficult process, has found peace with the situation. They both maintain a relationship with Raquel, as they should. She's their mother, and the fact that she was a bad wife doesn't automatically make her a bad mother. I learned to separate those things. I learned that people are complex, capable of genuine love in some areas and terrible betrayal in others. 3 months ago, Raquel got engaged to the man she was dating. Valeria told me nervously, as if she feared my reaction. I told her the truth. I was happy for her, and I meant it sincerely. Raquel deserves to be happy. And if she found someone who makes her happy honestly, that's a good thing. We don't owe each other anything. We're two separate people living separate lives now. And that's okay. Eduardo hasn't had the same luck. According to the latest news Cristina received, he's working jobs he never imagined he'd have to do. His reputation in business circles was completely destroyed. No one wants to do business with someone who tried to defraud his own wife. He has tried to rebuild, but it's hard when you've burned all your bridges and lost all credibility. A part of me, a small, human part, feels some pity for him, but it's an abstract pity, the same you'd feel for anyone who destroyed their own life with bad decisions. It's not my responsibility, it's not my problem. He chose his path, and now he's living the consequences. I, on the other hand, am thriving. My business grew in ways I never anticipated. The investments I made with part of the $50 million are generating excellent returns. But more important than financial success is emotional success. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I'm genuinely content. Not euphorically happy every day because life doesn't work that way, but content, at peace, comfortable in my own skin. A month ago, I met someone. Her name is Isabel. She's 52, a university professor divorced 5 years ago. We met at a conference on social investments that we both attended. It wasn't love at first sight or anything dramatic. It was simply an interesting conversation that led to a coffee, that led to a dinner, that led to another dinner. I told her my story, not immediately, but eventually I told her about Raquel, about the infidelity, about the 3 months of waiting, about everything. She listened without judging and then shared her own divorce story, different from mine, but equally painful. There's something beautiful in connecting with someone who understands that we all carry scars, but that those scars don't define us. I don't know if Isabel and I will end up together long term. It's too early for those conclusions, but I do know that I'm open to the possibility. And that openness, that ability to trust again and try again, is proof that I've healed. Not completely, maybe never completely, but enough to live again. Cristina is dating someone too, an architect she met during the renovation of her house. She says he's different from everything she knew with Eduardo. It's simple, she told me. There's no drama. There are no lies. It's just simple and real. And that's exactly what we both needed after so much time living in the toxic complexity of broken marriages. This afternoon, after I finish writing this, I'm going to put my journal in my desk drawer next to Christina's original letter. That letter that said, the pain we feel when we're betrayed isn't a strategy. It's just pain, and pain makes us stupid. Those words changed my life. They taught me that immediate revenge is temporary satisfaction, but patient strategy is permanent protection. They taught me that waiting isn't weakness, it's wisdom. They taught me that emotional control in moments of crisis isn't coldness, it's smart survival. If I could talk to the Mauricio from 15 months ago, the one sitting in his office looking at an envelope full of money and a proposal that sounded insane, I would tell him this: do it. Trust the process. It's going to hurt like hell. You're going to want to quit 1,000 times, but on the other side of those 3 months of hell is your freedom, your dignity, your protected future. So take a deep breath and wait, because waiting isn't wasting time. It's choosing the moment that protects you. And that's exactly what I did. I waited, I documented, I protected, and I won. I didn't win in the sense of destroying Raquel or getting revenge. I won in the sense of coming out whole from something that could have completely destroyed me. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a different man than I was: stronger, wiser, more aware of his own worth. A man who learned that self-love sometimes means protecting yourself from the people who should love you but chose to hurt you. Life after betrayal exists. Happiness after divorce is possible. And peace after the emotional war is real. It just requires patience, strategy, and the will to believe you deserve something better than the lies they sold you as love. I made it. And if you're going through something similar, you can make it too. Just remember, emotion shouts loudly, but intelligence wins in the long run. Choose wisely. What would you have done in my place? Would you have confronted her immediately, or would you have waited like I did?